She walked past me like I wasn't there. We were at the Argent Ballroom, over 300 people, candlelit tables, jazz playing low in the background. But all I could hear were the deliberate clicks of her heels as she crossed the floor toward him. Not me. Him. I wasn't supposed to be at this event. She told me it was an industry thing. Said it would be awkward if spouses came. But I found the invite. It had both our names. I didn't tell her I saw it. I just showed up. I wish I hadn't. She didn't see me right away. She was laughing. That laugh. The one I used to think was mine. Her hand was on his chest as he whispered something into her ear. And then, God help me, she reached up and adjusted his tie. It wasn't just flirty. It was familiar. I didn't storm in. I didn't make a scene. I just watched. From the shadows. Like some side character in her story. When she finally saw me, her face didn't twist in shock. It didn't soften in guilt. It hardened. She marched over, wine in hand, as if I had crossed the line. You shouldn't be here, she hissed. I'm on the invitation. She scoffed. That was a mistake. I don't even know what I said after that. I think I asked about the guy. She said his name was Callan. A friend, she said. A client. I told her I saw the way they danced last time. That it wasn't just dancing. That's when I said it. The words that ended whatever illusion I had left. If you step out there and dance with him again, then we'll be having a different talk. She stared at me for a long second. Then. She laughed. Not nervously. Not guiltily. She laughed like she pitied me. And then she turned, and walked right back to him. Click. 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 That sound has been replaying in my head for 4 nights now. Louder than any argument we've ever had. Louder than the silence that followed. She didn't come home that night. She hasn't worn her wedding ring since. And me? I'm still hearing the sound of her walking away. Like I was just another piece of background noise she finally decided to mute. When she came back 3 days later, it wasn't to talk. It wasn't to explain. It wasn't even to pretend. She came back for her curling iron. That's it. Walked straight in while I was eating cereal at the kitchen counter like a ghost that still had keys. Didn't even make eye contact. No apology. No shame. Just a soft hum under her breath like she was folding towels in a hotel room she didn't plan to stay in. I said her name. Once. Calmly. But my voice cracked in the middle like it didn't belong to me anymore. She turned, finally, and sighed as if I'd asked her to help move a couch. Ellery, please don't start. I'm not starting anything. I just want to know what's going on. She rubbed her temple like I was giving her a headache. It's complicated. That's the phrase cheaters say on television. It's complicated. What does that even mean? Are we complicated? Is he uncomplicated? Is walking all over your husband's dignity supposed to be complicated? I couldn't bring myself to raise my voice. I don't do confrontation. I never have. When she used to get upset, I'd just disappear into errands. Buy her coffee. Clean the car. Say sorry even when I didn't know what for. But this wasn't the kind of thing you could fix with a vanilla latte and flowers from the gas station. I tried one more time. Was that the first time you were with him? She blinked. Slowly. Then sat on the arm of the couch like she was thinking really hard about whether she owed me the truth. Her eyes finally met mine, and she said, no. I think my lungs stopped working for a full 10 seconds. Then she added something worse. But it wasn't serious. Not serious. Oh. So it's fine, then. I don't remember much of what happened next. I know I stood up too fast because the blood rushed out of my head and I nearly toppled over. I asked her to leave. She told me I was being dramatic. I told her this wasn't a movie, this was our marriage. And then, on her way out the door, she left something behind. A bracelet. Gold with a green stone. I knew it wasn't hers. I'd never seen it before. And Marin doesn't wear green. She says it washes her out. So I checked it. Inside the clasp, there was an engraving, "To see, for every Thursday." I'm not stupid. Her work meetings, on Thursdays had been non-negotiable for nearly a year. Always Thursdays. Always the same lie. I sat down at the dining table, that bracelet burning in my hand like it was radioactive, and I realized something horrifying. She didn't slip up at the gala. She didn't lose control. She simply stopped hiding. And the moment I gave her that ultimatum, "If you dance with him again," she made her decision. Not because she was forced to. Not because she was confused. She wanted me to see. She was done. But me? I was still here. Sitting in the same chair. Eating the same cereal. Mourning something that apparently died long before I noticed. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I just sat in the living room staring at our wedding photos and trying to remember when her eyes stopped smiling in them. I kept thinking about that bracelet. How many Thursdays does it take to destroy a home? Tomorrow, I'm going to do something I never thought I'd do. I'm going to message him. The man she danced with. The man she let kiss her neck while I stood 20 feet away pretending not to notice. I want to know what kind of man looks a husband in the eye, and smiles anyway. And if he answers. I didn't even know what I was expecting. Maybe I thought I'd feel powerful, like reclaiming something, my dignity, maybe. Or maybe I wanted to scare him. Shake him. Make him feel even a fraction of the violation that's been festering inside me since that night at the gala. But when I finally hit send on the message to Rylan, my hands were trembling like I'd just jumped off a cliff. I found him easily. His Instagram was the first thing that popped up when I typed his name. The man lives for the camera, shirtless boating pics, whiskey in hand, smug captions like, "Stay dangerous." Everything about him screamed arrogance. But the comments under each photo made me feel smaller than I already did. Your trouble smirking face, marry me, God, that smile. I couldn't help wondering if Marin had left any of those. Or if she was the one he actually kept. I stared at his DMs for an hour before I typed it. Then deleted it. Then typed it again. You know she's married, right? You danced with her like you'd already taken your turn. Not elegant. Not clever. But honest. He replied 7 minutes later. Ellery, right? I nearly dropped my phone. He knew my name. Look, man. This doesn't need to get weird. Whatever you and Marin have going on, that's between you two. She said you guys were done. Done? No. No, she never said that. She said, it's complicated. She said, don't start. She never said we were done. We're not done, I typed back, fingers hitting the screen too hard. You're interfering with a marriage. A real one. Not some fling. The dots blinked. Then vanished. Then blinked again. She told me you were barely roommates. Said you hadn't touched her in months. That you were like, emotionally dead. I read that sentence over and over again, feeling like someone had driven an ice pick straight into my chest. Emotionally dead? Of course I hadn't touched her in months. She flinched when I did. She spent every night working late or staring at her phone, face lit up by texts she never let me see. Every time I tried to talk to her, she shut me down. And I shut down in return. I shrank to fit the version of me she could tolerate. That's what they never tell you about emotional abandonment, it's not an explosion, it's erosion. I didn't reply. I couldn't. Not then. Instead, I sat in the dark, gripping my phone like it was the only thing keeping me from drifting off into some abyss. That's when I heard her car in the driveway. Yes, she came back. Just like that. No warning. No apology. No flowers or grand gestures. Just the sound of her key in the lock, as casual as if she'd stepped out for groceries. I didn't get up. I didn't speak. I just listened to her heels again, the click, click, click that was now permanently tied to the sound of betrayal. She went upstairs. I heard the shower. Then drawers opening. Then silence. 20 minutes later, she appeared in the doorway. Hair damp. Wearing my college sweatshirt, like nothing had happened. "Can we just, not talk tonight?" she asked, not even waiting for an answer before collapsing onto the bed. "Can we just not talk?" I laid there beside her, wide awake, listening to her breathe like she hadn't just lit a fire and left me in the middle of it. I was too afraid to move. Too afraid that if I did, I'd shatter completely. Somewhere around 2 a.m. I got out of bed, quietly walked to the guest room, and locked the door behind me. Not because I was angry. But because for the first time, I realized I didn't trust the person sleeping under my roof. And I needed space, just to figure out how to breathe again. Tomorrow, I'm going to dig deeper. Because I need answers. Real ones. And I think I know where to start, her calendar app. I should have slept. I should have at least closed my eyes and faked peace. But something about her being asleep in my house again made my skin crawl. Not because she was there, but because she was there so easily. Like nothing had been broken. Like she hadn't just slipped out of one life and back into another with the casual grace of someone changing coats. I stayed curled on the guest room mattress, staring at the wall, the glow from the hallway nightlight slicing a thin line of truth through the dark. And I kept thinking, if she was bold enough to bring that bracelet into our house, if she was already lying to my face while wearing my sweatshirt, then what else had she left breadcrumbs for? The idea struck around 4:20 a.m., right as I was drifting into that hazy, exhausted near sleep. Her phone. Not the texts. I'd already seen enough. Not the photos either. I wasn't ready to know if she had captured their moments like she used to capture ours. No, it was the calendar. Marin was always obsessively organized. Color-coded entries, recurring reminders, synced across all devices. I used to joke that if I ever forgot her birthday, I could check her Google Calendar before she noticed. She'd laugh and pretend she was just detail-oriented. But really, it was control. She liked knowing exactly where she was, what was next, and who was watching. So I waited. I waited for her to be deeply asleep, that kind of unconscious where her breathing slows into a soft rhythm. Then I crept out of the guest room like a thief in my own house, barefoot and ashamed. Her purse was on the hallway bench. I opened it slowly, carefully, like it might explode. Her phone was inside. No passcode. Of course. Why would she need one? I was never the snooping type. Until now. I opened the calendar app. And I swear to God, my heart stopped cold. It was all there. Hidden in plain sight. Thursdays marked with a small green dot labeled simply, session. Sometimes an emoji. Sometimes a time range. Never a location. Just, session. Every week for the past 11 months. But then I tapped on one of them. Expanded it. And found a private note. Cottage. Black dress. No jewelry. Another, early check-in. He brings the wine. And another, birthday surprise, new tie for him, lingerie for me. I felt sick. Actually nauseous. My throat closed, and I dropped the phone into my lap like it had burned me. The worst part? The cottage. I knew that place. It was a rental an hour outside the city. We went there once, 5 years ago, for our anniversary. I'd surprised her with it. She said it was the first time she'd ever felt completely unplugged. I still remember the way her voice cracked when she said it. She'd taken him there. Our place. That's when the shaking started. My hands. My chest. I sat there in the hallway, back against the wall, staring at the glowing screen while time stood still. I wasn't just mourning a marriage anymore. I was mourning reality. What else had she repurposed? What other pieces of our life had she handed to him like they were nothing? I couldn't go back to the guest room. I couldn't go anywhere. I stayed on that hallway floor until sunrise, until I heard her stirring again upstairs. I quickly slipped her phone back in the purse and returned to the kitchen, poured myself coffee I didn't want, and tried to look like I hadn't just uncovered the timeline of my own humiliation. When she came down, she looked surprised to see me awake. "You're up early," she said, tugging at her sleeves like a nervous teen. I just nodded. "Did you sleep?" she asked. I lied. "Yeah. A little." She nodded too, then busied herself with toast and a banana, like we were roommates again, two ghosts playing house. I watched her like a stranger, like I was trying to figure out what species she actually belonged to. The Marin I married wouldn't have done this. But maybe she never existed. Maybe I just projected her into existence and she got tired of pretending. That day, I didn't go to work. I didn't eat. I just drove. Not to the office. Not to my parents. Not even to the cottage. I drove to a small law firm 3 blocks from my old college dorm. A place I hadn't set foot in since I helped a buddy draw up a contract for a failed app idea. I walked in, sat down across from a woman named Lorna, and said, "I think I'm ready to ask what divorce papers look like." And yet, even as I said it, I still wasn't sure if I could follow through. Because part of me still hoped she'd look at me one day and say, "I was wrong. I messed up. Please, help me fix it." But the other part of me, the part still hearing the word "session" in her voice, that part had already started packing. I didn't bring up the calendar the next day. Or the day after. I thought I would, I really did. I thought I'd slam the phone down on the table and demand answers. Make her squirm like I've been squirming. But something in me wasn't ready yet. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was that familiar whiny little voice in my head whispering, "What if you misunderstood? What if there's still something left to salvage?" So instead, I watched her. Closely. Like a detective. Every movement. Every glance at her phone. Every excuse to run out for a bit. And what I found wasn't the passionate affair I expected. It was worse. It was methodical. She was careful. She deleted calls right after she made them. She'd pause and glance over her shoulder before answering texts. One night, she left her laptop open in the kitchen, and when I walked in, she snapped it shut like I'd walked in on her dressing. I asked what she was working on. She smiled and said, "Just spreadsheets." Then changed the subject to our grocery list. She had gone professional with her betrayal. Not spontaneous. Not messy. Polished. Precise. That's what broke me the most. It wasn't that she didn't love me anymore. It's that she had trained herself to pretend she did. And I let her. But something shifted inside me that third morning. She came into the kitchen wearing that soft gray cardigan, the one she always threw over her shoulders on the days she knew I was working from home. I used to love seeing her in it. Today it just looked like a costume. She poured her coffee, leaned against the counter, and asked, "Do you need anything from the store later?" I looked up. Her eyes were calm. Empty. And that's when I said it. "I know about the cottage." She froze. Her knuckles tightened on the mug. "I know about Thursdays." I know about the notes. The wine. The gifts. The lingerie. I know everything, Marin. The silence that followed was volcanic. Not loud, but ready to blow. She didn't deny it. Didn't even blink. How long have you known? She asked, voice like glass. Since the gala. But I didn't have proof until I found your calendar. A tiny twitch in her jaw. She set the mug down very gently, like she didn't trust her own hands. You went through my phone. You left it unlocked, I said. And you left your guilt in there, in case I was ever brave enough to look. She swallowed. I didn't plan for it to go this far. That line. That cowardly, scripted, dead-eyed line. I didn't plan for it to go this far. I wanted to scream. Instead, I just laughed. A quiet, bitter sound. So what now? I asked. Do you leave? Do I leave? Or do we keep dancing around this until we forget who we used to be? She stepped forward, and for a moment, I thought she was going to apologize. That she was going to crumble and cry and fall into my arms and say the one thing I needed most: I made a mistake. I still love you. Please don't let me go. Instead, she whispered, you're not going to do anything. I blinked. What? You're not going to file. You're not going to leave. You'll sulk, and guilt me, and maybe sleep in the guest room again, but you won't do anything, Ellery. You never do. That one hit me in the ribs. You've spent our entire marriage waiting for me to decide what kind of man you are. You think I cheated because I'm evil? No. I cheated because I needed to feel alive. And you just fade. I don't remember standing up, but suddenly I was on my feet, heart pounding, fingers twitching like they wanted to grab something, anything, just to anchor me to reality. Then why are you still here? I snapped. Why keep pretending? She looked away. For the first time, I saw a crack. Just a hairline fracture behind the calm. I don't know, she said quietly. Maybe because I hoped you'd finally surprise me. I didn't have a response to that. And she didn't wait for one. She grabbed her keys and left. Again. I stood there for almost an hour, just staring at the front door, wondering how a man can be so thoroughly erased from his own home. Wondering how I became the one waiting for her to make the next move. But not anymore. That night, I made copies of everything. Screenshots. Calendar exports. I printed the messages from Rylan. I organized it all in a folder and labeled it something stupid like Notes in my Google Drive. I wasn't going to file yet. But for the first time in months, I was preparing. Because the next time she walked through that door, it would be me holding the surprise. And she wouldn't see it coming. I didn't sleep that night either. I sat up scrolling through our old photos, like some masochist addicted to pain. There we were, her head on my shoulder at that diner we loved. Her fingers looped through mine on a foggy cliffside in Oregon. Her laughing at some dumb joke I probably don't even remember telling. I kept staring at her eyes in each photo, trying to measure the exact moment the light went out. Trying to pinpoint the frame where I stopped being hers and became just another character in her background. The truth is, I never noticed the change. That's what haunts me. I didn't feel the temperature drop, I just woke up one day buried in ice. By morning, something inside me had calcified. Not anger. Not even resolve. Just this dense, heavy knowing. Like I had crossed an invisible line I could never go back over. She returned just before noon, breezing in like she hadn't detonated my world 3 times over. She smelled like peppermint and leather. Her makeup was flawless. She didn't look guilty. She looked refreshed. That's what broke me again. Not the cheating. Not the lies. But the fact that I was losing sleep over a woman who slept better without me. She noticed the manila folder on the dining table first. Stiffened just slightly. "What's this?" she asked. I didn't answer. I just slid it toward her and said, "Take a look." She opened it slowly, cautiously, as if I might have filled it with explosives. Her eyes skimmed the screenshots, the calendar printouts, the message threads. Her mouth opened a few times but no words came out. Page by page, I watched her entire body language shift. Her breathing changed. Her posture wilted. And for once, she didn't know what to say. "Good. I didn't send this to anyone," I said. "Yet." She finally looked up at me. "Why are you doing this?" I leaned back in my chair. "Because I wanted to see your face when you realize what it's like to be held hostage by silence." She sat down slowly. "Ellery." "No," I interrupted. "You don't get to soften this. You don't get to make it sound like something that just happened. You planned it. You scheduled it. You used places that were ours. You repurposed memories. You repurposed me." She stayed quiet. I continued. "You told him I was emotionally dead. But what were you? Present? Honest? Did you ever once look at me while you were gone and think, he deserves to know?" "I didn't want to hurt you," she said weakly. I laughed. A short, sharp sound. "No. You just didn't want to see me hurt. There's a difference." She pushed the folder back across the table. "So what now?" I slid it back again. "I'm not asking you to decide. This time, I will. But before I do, I want you to do something for me." She raised an eyebrow. "I want you to walk upstairs. Open the closet. Look at the empty space on the right side. And then tell me, honestly, how long you thought it would take before I started packing." A flicker of panic crossed her face. I didn't move. She went. A few minutes later I heard the sound I was waiting for, her quick footsteps on the stairs, the stuttered gasp, the way the hangers clanged together like wind chimes in a storm. She came back down pale. You actually moved out?" "Just the essentials," I said. "The rest depends on what happens in the next few days." She sat down again, shaking now. Her voice cracked. "Why didn't you tell me you were going to do this?" "Because if I gave you a warning," I said, "you'd turn it into another power play. This wasn't about winning. It was about waking up. And I needed you to feel what it's like when someone makes a decision without letting you rewrite the narrative." Silence. She tried to speak again, but I stood up. "There's one more thing," I said. "I know who gave you the bracelet." She blinked. "What bracelet?" "The one you left in your purse. The engraved one. For every Thursday. You forgot to lie about it." She looked like she was about to faint. I contacted his wife. Her eyes shot wide open. I told her everything. Sent her the screenshots. The calendar. The details about the cottage. She replied 5 minutes later with 2 words, "Thank you." Now her hands were shaking. She looked like she might vomit. That's what accountability feels like, Marin. No spin. No illusion. Just the truth. Cold, sharp, and clean. I left her there at the table, surrounded by the wreckage she swore would never touch her. And for the first time in years. I walked away before she could. I thought I'd feel something different after it was all out in the open, some kind of release, maybe. Closure. But the truth is, it was quiet. Almost too quiet. Like the house had been emptied of something invisible. Not just tension. Not just secrets. But some essence I couldn't name. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was hollow. Like someone had ripped the insulation out of the walls and I was hearing every creak and groan for the first time. Marin didn't speak to me for 2 days. No arguments. No questions. She just existed in the space like a shadow that wasn't sure where to fall. She cooked once, left the food untouched on the counter, and then stopped altogether. I heard her crying at night. I didn't go in. I didn't comfort her. Not because I hated her. But because I didn't know how anymore. The roadmap we'd lived by was gone. And I didn't trust her voice, her tears, her silence, any of it. On the third morning, I opened my inbox and found an email from her affair partner's wife, Caroline. She wrote a full page. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't angry. It was measured. She told me they had 2 daughters. That she had suspected for months but didn't have the courage to look. That she had seen changes in his behavior, the gym sessions, the golf retreats, the sudden interest in cologne. She said my email didn't destroy her. It saved her. She attached a photo of her girls sitting on the couch watching a movie with popcorn on their laps. And underneath the image, she wrote, "Thank you for not letting me waste another year explaining away a man who never planned to stay." I stared at that photo for what felt like hours. Because for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about me. I wasn't the only casualty. The damage didn't end at the edge of our bed. It rippled outward. Into rooms I'd never seen. Into children's lives. Into women like Caroline, who wore the same quiet ache I'd been dragging behind me. Later that afternoon, Marin finally broke the silence. She walked into the kitchen, sat across from me at the table, and placed her wedding ring down between us. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," she said. "But I need you to know something." I didn't say anything. Just stared at the ring, how dull it looked under the kitchen light. "I wasn't trying to fall in love with him," she continued. "At first, I just liked being seen. Really seen. He asked me about things you used to care about. My ideas. My thoughts. My writing. You used to ask, too, but then you stopped. That made me flinch. Because part of it was true. But then she added something that twisted the knife. And when I realized I had to choose between a man who noticed my soul and a man who noticed when I was 10 minutes late, I chose the one who noticed. I swallowed hard. You chose the one who was willing to blow up his family." She looked away. "I didn't know he was married at first." "That makes it better." "No," she said, "but it makes it different." I didn't reply. I was done giving her lifelines. Let her tangle in her own words. Let her spin until the truth wrapped around her throat. Then, quietly, she asked, "What did Caroline say?" So she knew I had heard back. I pushed my laptop toward her and let her read it. As she read, her hands trembled. Not dramatically. Just the kind of tremble that starts at the fingertips and creeps up your spine when reality finally sets in. "She has kids," Marin whispered. "She has daughters," I said. "Little ones." A tear rolled down her cheek. I didn't hand her a tissue. I didn't reach out. She stood up and walked to the window. Said nothing for a long time. Then, with her back still to me, she asked, "Are you going to send the folder to anyone else?" I tilted my head. "Are you worried about losing your job?" She didn't answer. "That depends," I said, "on whether you try to spin this into my fault." She turned around slowly. Her face was soft. Wrecked. Human. "I won't," she said. "I promise." And for the first time in weeks, I believed her. That night, I slept in our bed. She didn't. She stayed downstairs. I found her there in the morning, curled up on the couch with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, eyes red, but open. Awake. Waiting. "I'm going to move in with my sister for a while," she said. I nodded. She didn't ask if I wanted her to stay. I didn't say I wanted her to go. Some things don't need to be spoken aloud. She left that afternoon with just 2 suitcases. No tears. No last-minute hugs. Just a quiet glance as she stepped out the front door. But before she closed it, she looked at me one last time and said, "I didn't fall out of love with you, Ellery. I just stopped knowing how to love you in a way that didn't make me resent myself." Then she was gone. And I was left standing in a house that suddenly felt 1,000 square feet too big, and 20 years too quiet. Weeks passed. Then months. The seasons shifted without permission, leaves turned gold and brittle, the heater clicked on for the first time in October, and I found myself returning to old habits I thought were long gone. Quiet walks through the neighborhood with my hands buried in my pockets. Staring at couples on benches, wondering how many of them were pretending. Wondering how many of them were quietly dying the way we did, slowly, politely, silently. But life didn't stop. It never does. At first, I expected her to call. To knock. To text something vague at 2 a.m., like, "Do you ever think about us?" But she didn't. Marin vanished in the cleanest way a person can. She respected the space I asked for. And though her silence was the sharpest grief I'd ever known, it was also, oddly merciful. I finished packing the rest of her things one weekend. No drama. No flare-ups. Just box by box, memory by memory. I kept a few things. Not out of sentimentality, but because they belonged to me too. The blanket we bought on our honeymoon. The worn-out mug she always forgot in the microwave. And one photo, just one, where we both looked happy and honest, before everything cracked. I framed it. Put it in the drawer. Not to revisit it. But to remember that once, it was real. And slowly, the house became mine again. Not ours. Not hers. Just mine. I started reading again. Took a pottery class, of all things. It was awkward and messy and stupid, but I liked how the clay didn't care what I'd been through. It just needed warmth and pressure and a steady hand. Kind of like me. I also started talking to people more. Reached out to my brother, who I'd ghosted during the worst of it. Had lunch with an old coworker who used to joke that I'd disappeared into marriage fog. I even went on a date, not a rebound, not a bandage. Just coffee. We talked about movies, not trauma. She didn't ask about my divorce. I didn't bring it up. That night, for the first time in forever, I slept with both eyes closed. And then, about 2 months after Marin moved out, I got a letter. Not a text. Not an email. A real letter. Folded. Sealed. Written in her handwriting, the one I used to love on birthday cards and sticky notes. She said she wasn't writing to reopen anything. She just wanted me to know that she was in therapy. That she had started journaling. That she hadn't reached out because she knew I needed space. But she also wanted to say, clearly, that despite everything, she would always be grateful for the years that were real. She ended with this line. "You were the safest place I ever had, even when I didn't know how to live inside it." I didn't cry. I didn't spiral. I just smiled. And I put the letter next to the photo in the drawer. Then I walked outside, let the autumn air hit my face, and for the first time in nearly a year, I felt like the world wasn't pressing down on my chest. It was lifting. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If you've ever been through something like this, if you've had a moment where everything cracked but somehow, you made it through, tell us about it in the comments. Sometimes the most unexpected chapters lead to the quietest peace. This is Reddit Confessions. And sometimes, the truth sets you free, even if it hurts first.